Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 141, Infiltration 03. Third Person POV. Land of Sand, Year 38. A night had passed in the camp, and as a man walked through the already bustling place in the morning, he was a bit groggy, and suddenly bumped into a ninja who was running. Sorry, the young voice spoke to him. Hey, watch out. The ninja complained to what seemed to be a boy running through the camp and quickly lost sight of him. Whatever, he murmured and continued walking to his destination, heading to a tent in a corner of the camp. Finally. It's your turn now, good luck, because I'm going to sleep at last, a ninja in front of that tent commented, while the one who heard nodded. Alright, the still sleepy ninja said. I left some unfinished stuff on the table, so if you could finish them for me, I'd appreciate it. Now I'm going to grab something to eat before I go to sleep, he said. The first one just nodded affirmatively and entered the tent, where there were several cabinets filled with scrolls, all the records that the camp made. There were at least 5 ninjas working on this during the same shift, but at this early hour, only this ninja began the day organizing the place for others to arrive later. There were open scrolls on a table there with a pen. The ninja sighed as he sat down and began to read the scrolls to continue his colleague's work. However, before he could react, a figure reappeared over him, giving a light tap on his head with a scroll in the palm of his hand, pinning it on the man's head using a desert burqa. The fuinjutsu on the scroll quickly activated, and the man's eyes began to close, and he fainted the next moment. Minato landed on the ground. While still disguised as a Suna ninja, he first assessed the situation around the tent after making sure the ninja had fainted with his extremely strong fuinjutsu, which he had copied long ago the way the first Hokage knocked out the nine-tailed fox during the fight against Madara, using a seal placed on the forehead of his target. After seeing that there were some guards, but none of them noticed the movement inside the tent and everything was normal, he began to act before someone arrived at this location and found him. He quickly created some clones and began to look at the scrolls in the cabinets throughout the tent. Besides trying to find a loophole in Suna's documents, he was already researching the movements and missions that Suna has been undertaking, plotting some possible plans of the Sand Village against Konoha. This continued for minutes, while the original Minato continued to analyze any movement that might expose him from outside with his haki. As soon as his clones saw a part of the scrolls, he made them disappear, absorbing all the memories. The poison in his arm was slightly affected with the use of chakra again, but Minato continued steadfast and made other clones, now with the intention of tampering with the documents there. He began to insert information into the mission histories, putting himself as a ghost character within Suna's mission system so that as soon as they researched him, he could easily pass as a village ninja who had undertaken various missions and had reasonable behavior. This wasn't something that would work in the long term, but it was enough for him to gather information on where Chio and the antidote were. After tampering with everything to pass himself off as a chunin, after having done some important missions, and his ghost team died on a mission while he had left the battlefield to stay as an auxiliary member in the camp, helping with fuinjutsu and puppet creation. With this history now in the system, Minato could breathe a little. After doing this, the clones disappeared while he removed the seal from the ninja's head and flicked his forehead, making him open his eyes. Did I doze off? The ninja seemed surprised as he didn't feel Minato disappear behind him. Maybe I didn't sleep well. Anyway, let's continue the work. He murmured before starting to fill out the papers again without noticing the slightest alteration in them. Minato had teleported to another corner of the camp and was heading to a tent, a different one from where he had taken down the ninja, as it would be suspicious for him to be there, especially since his colleagues might already be missing their teammate and could be looking for him, while the man was inside the belly of a frog that Minato had summoned. Minato waited in the tent while settling down on the ground, entering a lotus position to focus. He tried to keep the poison under control through his chakra. My chakra is somehow preventing it from spreading. Minato couldn't help but murmur as he analyzed his situation, using his observation haki to perform his self-diagnosis. This is my yawn, the life element in my body is slowing down the poison. He concluded, wondering how much real yang he had in his blood, as with it, he could last up to a month without the poison really affecting him, besides the pain. He also made the chakra be consumed by the poison without affecting him, as showing his real amount of chakra could be a problem, since some had already noticed something abnormal in this state. So there he stayed. Minato had tampered with the documents to fit into the camp's activities. At this moment, he was testing if the ninjas would come after him, since he should be on the list of ninjas for the activities he had done yesterday. In the end, he wasn't sure. When a shadow appeared in front of the tent. "Hey, you! Get out of there now!" He heard a grumbling voice and Minato opened his eyes, calmly rising and stepping outside. "What are you doing here? You should be helping in the puppet making." A jonin immediately complained as he looked at Minato and the Borka angrily. "I apologize for that, sir. I ended up falling asleep," Minato spoke, while the man continued with the same look. "Forget it now. Come and follow me. You will be punished for this later." He spoke, as Minato sketched a small hidden smile, unseen by the man. In the end, he returned to his activity of creating fuinjutsu seals in the middle of the camp and headed to the assembly tent again, while continuing to apply the seals on the puppets. He continued with this, realizing that he had finally been integrated into the camp, while some rumors about a missing ninja began to circulate. However, no one could find him, much less suspect Minato, since he already had a mission history, as a member of Suna with a somewhat tragic past. He ended up staying until the end of that day working while receiving a minor punishment, but it was the next day that, while Minato was with the group creating new puppets, he was called by another jonin who approached the site. "I need this boy for a while." "Hey, you! The command tent is calling. Come with me." Minato heard the jonin after asking to release him while nodding without resistance and leaving the place to follow him. Arriving at the location, he found Chiyo's son again, alongside a younger man, who had been with him all the time, and the future Kazekage of the Suna village, Raza. Minato entered and stood in front of them. "Kai-sama." Minato murmured, making a slight bow, while he didn't need to do the same with Raza, since he was unknown at this time, despite being one of the most powerful ninjas, but not having a strong political position in the village yet. "So you are Kai, a ninja with above-average talent, but who gave up the battlefield after having your team exterminated, being the only survivor on a mission." Chiyo's son continued, while reading the reports in front of him, those that were tampered with by Minato. "Yes, my lord. After Ekba-sensei was killed, I wanted to help at the camp since then." Minato spoke in a sad tone, using Yukai as his alias and Ikba as his fake sensei. "I see, that's a pity. From what I'm seeing here, you had great potential, but your team ended up being ambushed by the Leaf. You're here." "It's a pity," the red-haired man spoke calmly. "Yes, Kai-sama." Minato murmured respectfully. "Anyway, I called you because we noticed a large amount of chakra, and you have an impressive history. It seems you are entering the expert level of fuinjutsu, which at your age is prodigious, and although you don't have an affinity with puppets and the fan, you still possess wind element jutsus and fine aim with throwing tools," he said, looking at Minato and setting the paper aside. "I wouldn't want a talent like yours to stay just here in the camp. You can be very useful for Suna. Therefore, I have a proposal for you," the ninja spoke, and Minato couldn't help but be more pleased with this, as he had overheard their conversation a few days ago, when they noticed his presence and were assembling a team, so Minato began to tamper with the documents. "I understand. I want to serve the village in the best way possible, but I have some trauma from what happened to my team. What is your proposal, Kai-sama?" Minato spoke respectfully. "I understand, but I'm sure that this can change your mind. I would like you to integrate into a new team that is being formed. By my side is one of the most talented ninjas we have in Suna, Raza. I'm sure you've heard of him." Kai spoke. "Yes, Kai-sama. Everyone knows him, especially after the event where he eliminated 3 squads of Konoha Umbu. He's already a war hero." Minato responded, while pretending to look with admiration, and the men were pleased with that. So, kid, I wanted to know if you want to join my team. There are two more we are selecting. They are the elite of Suna's youth, and when we were looking for a third to integrate into an elite team, we found you. I know you might have some trauma, but to let someone like you waste your strength making seals is a cowardly act, he spoke. Minato seemed to hesitate a bit before adopting a firmer look, putting on a little act. It would be an honor, my lord. Please make me your student then. Minato spoke immediately, now unafraid to show such interest, as anyone would naturally be with such a proposal. Very well, let's see how you do first. We'll meet your colleagues later. There's a girl who is already in the camp, but the last member is in the village. Therefore, we'll do some missions to see him. I want to see you more closely during this time. Yes, please, Lord Raza-sensei. Minato seemed quite excited. Great, you may go, kid, and welcome to the team. I'll call you later, so be prepared and let's see how you fare, he spoke as Minato left the tent with a smile, now able to infiltrate the heart of the Land of Wind. Chapter 142 Infiltration 04. Third Person POV. Land of Sand, Year 38. Yu Kai. Command is asking for your presence. A voice called out to Minato just as he was focused in his tent, emerging moments later to find a ninja who requested his presence at the main tent, where the superiors would be waiting. Minato walked to the location, entering with permission from the guards, and saw Raza and Kai again, waiting for him, along with a girl also in the tent. You finally arrived. I called you here to inform you and the girl, your new partner, that we are heading to Suna village. I want you to organize your things for our departure, understood? Raza spoke this time. Yes. Minato replied, while the girl nodded. You may go. We'll meet here in an hour, don't be late. Raza requested, as Minato left the tent with his new companion. I heard your team was killed. I'm sorry. As he exited, Minato heard the voice beside him as the girl spoke. Minato wondered where he knew her from. She had a sharp gaze while her hair started with a dark tone and at the tips, or rather, her bangs ended with a red hue, something strange for Minato. After all, the girl did not wear a kafia like him. Yes. Minato commented, but didn't seem to converse as the girl took it as a painful subject for Minato. Anyway, my name is Pakura. I hope we can be good companions. She spoke finally and Minato nodded, heading back to his tent. Pakura. I still don't know her. Minato did not remember her, but her appearance and name were not too strange. Regardless, he quickly organized his things and went to the meeting point, arriving alongside Pakura with a backpack and wearing an outfit like his to protect from the heat. Great, let's go. Raza simply said and started leaping towards one of the camp's exits while they followed. They soon left behind the largest military force of Suna with the exception of the village itself and headed towards it. Raza-sensei, will we have missions soon in the rain country against Konoha? Bakura suddenly asked. Ha ha ha. I see you're eager, but not yet, we will first test you. I want to get to know you first before officially forming this team. Raza laughed amiably as they continued leaping through the desert. He wanted the best of the best for his team. After all, he had his own ambition and wanted to form a team that could bring him fame. Minato remained silent, still remembering that just a few years ago there was the same enthusiasm to go to war with Jiraiya-sensei, but he kept those thoughts to himself. I heard you are also a war hero. Pakura continued talking excitedly. They say you can manipulate gold, is that true? She asked. Yes. Raza admitted. Then you must be rich. She exclaimed and the man laughed once again. You could say I have some money. But I have to use it to fight against our enemies, so I wouldn't say I am rich. He replied. They continued the journey while the girl kept talking from time to time and even included Minato in the conversation, with him responding with as few words as possible. And after passing through miles of desert dunes, while encountering various patrols and messengers passing by them, a large rock began to appear in front of them. So this is Suna village. Minato murmured as they approached the place. He didn't have much to think about the wind country. There were cities scattered throughout, mainly where there was an oasis, but they hadn't passed any, so their company was just sand. As they approached, they went straight to a gap between the rocks, managing to pass through the middle. The village turned in the middle of that rock, while some guards stood in front of them, as Raza handed over a scroll. "I see, you may pass." The gate guard, if that was what he was, finally let them through. "Let's go, kids," Raza commanded, and they quickly entered the village. Suna village was made up of houses built from earth, and the whole village had only one coloration. It wasn't as dreary as Minato had thought the mist village would be, since it seemed monotonous, but here, the lack of color actually made the place quite charming. Besides this feature, there were a number of main paths, and all these paths led to the center of the village, where the Kazekage's office was located. Minato tried to act as though he was accustomed to this sight all the time, to not show any strangeness, while Raza didn't seem to notice anything and continued towards the center of the village, without stopping. There were citizens wearing burqas or fabrics to protect themselves from the sun, like him, going about their usual routines. Minato wondered how the economy functioned here, but he didn't have time to ponder too much on it. They followed until they finally arrived at the Kazekage's office. "Let's go inside," Raza directed as they entered the place. It didn't take long before they were attended to. After being approached by a ninja, they entered the office. Minato had never imagined he would be here before, and he encountered a man with dark hair of almost blue shade and sharp eyes on the other side of the table. While his tea emitted steam, he drank it calmly. "Kazekage-sama," Raza murmured as he knelt, and Minato and Pokora followed suit. The Kazekage stopped drinking his tea and looked at them for a few seconds before speaking. "Stand up," he requested, and they all did. "Give me the report," he simply said. Raza nodded and approached the table, handing it over as the Kazekage finally put down his tea and opened the scroll after it was handed to him. "Did you know that Kazekage-sama has magnet release and can control iron sand?" Pokora's voice came from beside Minato as she began to gossip, as usual. "Yes," was all Minato said, not wanting to talk in that place, but he couldn't help but study him. This was the current strongest man of Suna village, the one who could control iron and who would be killed by Sasori between the Second and Third War, not knowing the exact moment for that. "Let's see his strength." Minato couldn't resist his curiosity and wanted to observe him more closely. He quickly activated his observation haki, trying to gauge the man's strength. But that turned out to be a mistake, as it made the Kazekage quickly take his eyes off the scroll and look at Minato with a sharp glance. Minato was a bit surprised and quickly lowered his gaze, not wanting to attract more attention. Raza didn't seem to notice the exchange of glances as he waited respectfully for the Kazekage. The Kazekage felt that this boy seemed to want to probe all his secrets for a second. It was a strange feeling, but soon he put it aside and looked at Raza. "It seems we have some problems again with Hanzo wants to interfere in the south again. This will make it difficult for troops to move to attack Konoha." He murmured and switched to another topic while his gaze fell on Minato again. "So, this is your new team? They seem to be made up of impressive people," he commented. "Yes, I'm still testing them, but they are promising boys," Raza replied with a tone of pride. "I see. Probably Chiyo's grandson will also join your team, right? Is that why you are here?" he asked. "Yes, Kazekage-sama. I will be meeting them after this," Raza answered. "All right, you are dismissed," Raza said at the end, dismissing them. Raza, Pokora, and Minato left the building, heading to another part of the village. Minato quickly started to scan the entire village with his haki as they passed, but tried not to focus on strong people, remembering the mistake he nearly made by trying to study the Kage of this village closely. His haki might not be of chakra, but powerful people had strong instincts. It was a moment later that he got frustrated, for Chiyo was not there. He had scoured all the documents behind the woman who was creating poisons at the main camp while forging her current identity, but at the main camp, there was nothing about her. Thus, he hoped to see her in the village, since all the poison being transported to the camp came from here. It seems that since the incident with the alchemist, when the Phantom Squadron was active a long time ago, Suna village began to be more cautious, no longer producing poison at the outposts, and not even in the posts of the village, as he noticed, so the poison factory was in another place, and he had to investigate this later. Setting that aside, they arrived at a location where there would be a new warehouse used for puppet creation, but much larger than the one Minato was working on at the camp. As Raza entered the place, he encountered several people working and greeted them. He walked over to a corner where he found a boy, perhaps 1 or 2 years older than Minato, working on a puppet full of claws, with a quite strange shape. "Sasori," Raza called. Sasori stopped working for a moment and looked up, curious. "Yes?" He spoke, wary. "Are you sure you received a notice saying that your father put together a team?" "I'm here for that," Raza said. Sasori raised an eyebrow. "It's true. I read something about it, but I didn't care much. After all, I had a lot of work to do," he spoke calmly. Raza sighed, knowing that his father had already mentioned that the boy thought only about puppets all the time. "Anyway, you won't be working here anymore, so you might as well come with me," Raza said. Sasori looked displeased but nodded in the end, unable to disregard his father's orders. They went up to the roof, with Raza leading the way. "Well, as you know, we'll now be working together. Before forming an official team, I want you to get to know each other," Raza requested in a more stern tone than usual. "Anyway, you can go home today. We'll meet tomorrow to start the missions," Raza said. "Yes, sensei." Pakura seemed excited. Minato just nodded. Sasori remained silent the entire time. "I'm leaving now, see you tomorrow," Raza said as he left. "See you tomorrow too, now I'm off to see my mother." "Goodbye." Bakura said and left. Minato sighed and had to plan where to stay or what to do as he prepared to leave. "Hey, you!" Minato was about to leave when Sasori called him. "Yes?" Minato looked at him surprised. "You seem different." The boy began. "You're not from this village, are you?" Sasori asked directly, looking at Minato with eyes more curious than accusatory. "Raccoon. I'm taking advantage of this mission to finally see an infiltration mission with Minato using Jiraiya's skills here, but it won't last long. After all, Minato will have to act quickly." Chapter 143, Infiltration 05. Third-person POV. Land of Sand, Year 38. Only the sound of the wind was heard at this moment as Minato turned his attention to the boy in front of him. "Do you believe that?" Despite being surprised, Minato kept a neutral face. The boy, standing in front of him, just smiled. There was no malice in what he was saying, as far as Minato could tell through his haki. It was strange, as there was only curiosity in the famous Sasori regarding him. "Yes, I believe. You don't belong to this life. Moreover, if I can know this, others will too, whoever you are," Sasori said in a calm tone. "And you're helping me?" Minato was a bit staggered by this. "Well, I know we're at war, maybe you're from Konoha or another village, it doesn't matter. I just understand that we're only fighting by orders, while we are tied to a village. So, I can understand why you are here. But I can still be even more surprised by the fact that you are infected with the poison in your right arm," Sasori revealed at the end while Minato, for the third time, was surprised by his detection ability still with a friendly tone without showing bad intentions. Minato just stayed silent, not knowing what to answer. Sasori seemed to see the intruder thinking of a way out of this situation and just smiled, seeing that moving away from his puppets wasn't so bad after all. "If you think I'm going to denounce you, no, I won't do that. I'm just quite surprised that you've entered the village and were still accepted as a ninja. How did you do it? Did you perhaps kill someone and take on their identity?" The boy smiled and asked. "No. I just entered the camp's documents and altered them to make me exist." Minato had no reason not to answer that question as he saw the boy seem quite amazed. "I hope you are really skilled in espionage. And you are here for..." Sasori looked at Minato's arm at this moment, able to detect things no one else could. "Yes, I'm looking for a cure for the poison that your grandmother made," Minato said in a serious tone. "I see," the boy murmured. Minato was prepared to fight and escape at any moment. After all, there was no reason to deny things now that they had been cornered by this boy. But something told him that the boy would not denounce him, so he relaxed a bit, despite finding it quite strange. Sasori, although calm, his eyes showed a certain sparkle when his gaze fell on Minato's wound. The poison should have such a strong effect that it should bring you down, but you are still standing, and even more with the poison looking so less aggressive than on anyone else I've tested. I like you. The boy smiled. Minato was almost left speechless each time the boy spoke. I won't ask your real name, and I also won't denounce you. And if you want me to give you data on where the poison is, you are mistaken. Then you will have to find out on your own, but if you want, look for ninjas with red bands on their shoulder. That's all I would say. Good luck. Sasori spoke. Why are you helping me? Minato asked, still surprised. You seem to be a reasonable person, so I'd like to see you in action from here on. You are surrounded by an entire village, so it will be quite interesting to watch you trying to escape. The boy spoke with interest. Don't look at me like that, I'm bored here in the village. You might be my new entertainment. Sasori saw Minato simply look at him like an idiot before turning and jumping to his home. Minato just stood there for a while, thinking, before starting to move as well. Sighing, he ended up going through the village but immediately felt he was being watched. Well, it seems my time as a spy won't last long, so I will have to be quick. He thought calmly as he simply jumped onto the rooftops, eventually finding himself on a building advancing against the sun. His pursuers followed him, despite losing sight of him for a second when their eyes were dazzled by the desert sun. Minato still had some time before they discovered he was not a spy. So, he went to a hotel, paid for one night, and stayed there for the rest of the day, while spies watched him the entire time. As night began to cover the sky, turning the desert into a contrast with the temperature dropping drastically, ninjas went to give a report to the Kazekage in his office. He picked it up and began to read. Nothing special, so who are you, Yukai? The Kazekage murmured, still wondering who was behind this individual with not so controversial actions. But first, he needed to know more about this spy before acting, so he sent a team to the main border camp to ask and conduct a thorough investigation into the boy's name. While looking for answers, the Kazekage would have to keep Minato under surveillance to check for any suspicious activity. Meanwhile, Minato, at a different location from the hotel, was in the air. After all, he had used the sun to obscure his small pursuits and movements. He created his clones in the sunlight and made his original disappear with a flash of light in milliseconds, so no one really noticed Minato's oddity. Minato waited until a good time at night and advanced over the village in silence, searching for the ninjas Sasori had mentioned. He found them in a warehouse some time later, landing silently on the spot, while sensing two men with red cloths tied on their arm. We have to take this to the base before dawn. Minato continued listening to their conversation. Damn. All right, many of the workers said, while picking up a kind of acidic product, which seemed to be one of the ingredients of the poison. Minato, without risking it, watched attentively from the detail. I have to find some way to get to this. Minato murmured while trying to think until he finally took a kunai from his pocket. Minato knew he now needed some way to put his plan into action. The ninjas continued preparing things. I think everything is done here, let's go to the base, they said as Minato, unnoticed, quickly placed a kunai over the things they were storing in the camp. Well, it's over. Let's go, the ninjas said as Minato also left there, advancing to the desert. He looked for a place to hide and found a half-open cave and some piles of earth and sand nearby. After all, he needed a base while he didn't have the poison. If he were discovered, he couldn't easily leave the land of wind, as the country was immense, and, with the poison, he had no chance of using teleportation for such a distance. So, he had to find a place to recover at this moment. Meanwhile, at the camp near the border, Kai was examining stacks of scrolls, after receiving the strange news to investigate the boy who had seemed perfect to join Raz's team. He began to investigate, and everything seemed in order, as if the boy really existed and everything he had said about them was true, and even a fan agreed. Everything about Yukai seemed ordinary, until suddenly, Kai began to notice that the handwriting was identical in all documents about him, which made him frown, immediately realizing what the problem was. This was confirmed when the boy simply ceased to exist in the records. After certain information, it was as if there was nothing about him in the Academy's records, who his parents were, where he lived, his life. It all boiled down to the mission where he lost his companions, making him the sole survivor. The boy forged all this? Kai couldn't help but be surprised, realizing that indirectly, he had sent a spy inside the village. This left him quite stunned for a moment, before looking seriously and thinking that his son might be in danger at this moment. Send this statement to Kazekage-sama immediately, he ordered, quickly organizing a group of ninjas who ran to the village at dawn as well. Meanwhile, Minato had swapped his original with the clone, returning to Suna, while feeling a slight pain in his arm from using his teleportation jutsu repeatedly. He needed to act fast. He murmured, feeling the red veins spreading. "Let's go." That's what he said before his armor of thorn. He went up to the roof of a building that Raza had asked him to climb up with everyone. As he approached, he saw Pecora looking at him and greeted his personnel. "Well, you are here," Raza commented in a neutral tone. Minato, however, kept a serious look, knowing he had to be different at this moment since his time was running out. And it didn't take long to feel all the movement coming in his direction. At that instant, the building was immediately surrounded by several ninjas. "What is this?" Pecora yelled, immediately frightened, while Sarah's eyes turned to Minato, as if saying, "It seems your time of deceiving me has ended." Raza nodded, his gaze returning to Minato. "To think you were a spy all this time. It seems you made fools of us," Raza murmured with a severe tone this time, looking at Minato as if he were a traitor. Pecora also looked surprised at Minato at this moment, wanting to take him, but she could not. "Well, it seems I'm not as good a spy as I imagined," Minato murmured, not very concerned about what was around him. "You speak as if you're not in a no-win situation, boy. I must admit you were quite clever in forging your data and even entering Suna without anyone noticing. However, now you've been caught, and we're going to scour your mind to find out everything about you and your objectives. We don't have the famous Yamanaka clan's abilities, so our techniques might be quite harsh and painful, and it will be satisfying to use them against a spy like you," Raza said. He was angry, furious for having been deceived in such a way, which would be a reason for mockery for him. "That's not going to happen," Minato commented calmly and looked at Sasori, who had just been listening to the conversation the whole time. "Sorry about this," was the only thing he said before grabbing Sasori's arm and disappearing. As the agents surrounded him, along with Raza and a stunned Pecora, Minato simply vanished, leaving everyone dumbfounded. Chapter 144, Infiltration 06. Third-person POV. Land of Sand, Year 38. In a desert location, Minato appeared with the young Sasori amidst the sandy vastness. As the boy quickly looked around, trying to understand where they were and how they had gotten there so instantly. After all, they had been far, with their own village not appearing on any horizon. For a moment he was confused. After a brief silence, he turned to Minato with his curiosity getting the better of him. "How did you do that?" he immediately asked, trying to grasp what was happening. Minato looked at him at that moment. "It doesn't matter right now. You're going to help me with your grandmother, Shio. After all, I need her to provide me with the antidote, and she'll be more inclined to do so if I have you as a hostage, so nothing personal," Minato replied calmly. Sasori hesitated for a moment, but Minato continued, "Let's get out of here before all of Suna's forces come after us." "Wait." Sasori tried to argue, still confused. However, Minato didn't care about the boy's concerns as he continued to look for where his Raijin was at that moment. "I'll definitely run out of chakra if I teleport myself and Sasori this distance," Minato thought as he turned to look at one side of the desert, where his seal was. He had placed his kunai along with the items of the shinobi he spied on yesterday, using the band on the shoulder that Sasori had mentioned. At this moment, he felt behind him, Sasori reaching into his bag. He quickly unrolled a scroll as Minato turned to him leisurely. The boy began to perform jutsus on the seals within the scroll and used the summoning jutsu. Minato curiously looked at the three puppets that appeared in front of him. "I won't let you capture me so easily." Sasori spoke in a serious tone. Minato observed him for a while and responded, "Yes, I didn't think you'd cooperate with me anyway, but I need the antidote, even if you did help me," he said calmly. Even though he was against the boy who initially helped him, Minato knew he needed to save Tsuna's life. He had no intention of killing Sasori but knew he could use him. You seem to be a skilled ninja, but I won't give up so easily. Sasori responded with determination and quickly advanced towards Minato, trying to attack him. He was also interested in testing Minato from the moment he saw him. Minato was aware of his feelings towards him and knew the boy thought to see how he would fare to try something. Sasori was involved in a forbidden study of tampering with corpses. Nobody knew of his research, but they would certainly be shocked if they knew. After all, Sasori wanted to turn corpses into puppets in which he could use all the powers he wielded while alive. He wanted to see how Minato would fare and perhaps try to use this method to create a puppet of his dead body as soon as he killed him later. What he didn't know was Minato's strange jutsu that took him away in an instant. He had not been on the battlefield to hear the rumors of the young ninja from Konoha with multiple S-rank jutsus, while he spent most of his time researching and assembling puppets. But Minato knew that the Kazekage and Raza would know who he was the moment he disappeared. As soon as the puppets approached, Minato stood still. Sasori thought he would use that strange teleport as Minato had done before, but it was not exactly that. The boy made his puppets attack, and one of them immediately pierced Minato. The blade passed through Minato's body, emerging from the other side, and other puppets also attacked him, piercing his body in other parts. What? Sasori was surprised to see the puppet practically killing that ninja without him reacting initially. However, he was even more surprised by what happened next. Minato was there, looking calmly, as if he didn't have several blades embedded in his chest, shoulder, and abdomen, some dripping with poison. Is he okay? How is this possible? Sasori exclaimed, stunned, sure that it was not an illusion or clone to see if it was really real. Minato continued to look at him calmly. Physical attacks don't work against me, no matter what you try, Minato spoke in a serious tone. He had always wanted to say those words to an enemy and was satisfied to see the incredulous expression on the boy's face in front of him. But what kind of power is this? Sasori still asked, trying to understand what was happening, while Minato suddenly released a glow from his chest and other parts. The blades began to break, being disintegrated by the light within Minato's body, falling to the other side, onto the desert sand. With a simple movement, Minato shone and vanished from in front of the puppets with a flash, reappearing in front of Sasori, grabbing him by the neck before he could react or say anything as he spat saliva from the pressure on that part of his body by Minato. You might have helped me, Sasori, but I'm going to have to be hard on you, as I know your intentions. He spoke calmly, not knowing what Sasori wanted but certainly something bad with him. Before Sasori could react, Minato removed the bandage from his hand, revealing his red veins from the poison, and touched the boy's neck before he could do anything while opening his eyes trying to bring his puppets back with the chakra threads holding them. The poison quickly began to spread rapidly through Sasori's neck, leaving him stunned. Minato knew very well that Chio might try to destroy all the antidotes as soon as she knew of his presence there, perhaps even destroying the whole laboratory, since something similar happened at the outpost a while ago with Konoha capturing an alchemist making the poisons. Sasori tried to speak, feeling the pain as the poison began to enter his body. Don't worry, you won't die unless your grandmother doesn't care about you, which I find hard to believe, Minato said simply, as the boy fell to the ground, completely paralyzed in his body, becoming unconscious with the puppets simply collapsing in the middle of the sand after Sasori lost control. Minato just raised an eyebrow as he watched those things collapse. He had to admit these were much more sophisticated than those used on the battlefield. He knew Sasori was a genius, even turning the third Kazekage into a puppet. But now was not the time to admire that. He simply picked up the boy and teleported using his last reserves of chakra. Meanwhile, in a distant place, Chio, a woman in her 40s who loved her village and her family above all, was busy in her laboratory. The environment was permeated with the smell of chemicals as she continued to produce poisons to supply the war with some assistance. As she finished the new batch, she couldn't help but sigh. I hope this war ends soon. I need to rest. I don't even know if I'll retire this way, she murmured tiredly, while creating more and more poisons to face her enemies. Perhaps it was her fourth or fifth poison being made after studying Hanzo's poison for many years. As Chiyo continued with her things, a ninja appeared in her laboratory. "Chiyo-sama," he said, kneeling before her. "Yes, what is it now?" she asked, somewhat irritated by the interruption. "Urgent news from the village. An invader has entered and Kazekage-sama is preparing to capture him at this moment," he replied. This ninja was sent by the Mizukichi to pass information, not only to Chiyo but to all possible points. After all, if the invader could escape the village, other parts would be aware of him and could stop him in flight. Konoha wasn't the only one that had ninjas invading the village. Suna, Iwa, Kiri, and Kumo also had these problems during the war, but all had different methods of dealing with their invaders. Chiyo raised an eyebrow at this. "Another invader in the village? Well, that can happen," she murmured, as the ninja handed her the scroll and left the laboratory. She read the scroll out of curiosity and couldn't help but laugh. "Ha ha ha. I have to admit this one is creative. He passed himself off as a Suna ninja and got past my son, who put him on a team for Raza, even entering the village and going to the Kazekage." She couldn't help but admire the audacity of the last one, while her assistants in the laboratory just watched their boss laughing. Meanwhile, at another location in that base, the ninjas who had returned from the village were finally there, as they began to remove everything they had taken from the scrolls and place it in the storage. What is this? What a strange kunai," one of them said upon seeing Minato's kunai for the first time. "Forget it, it's just a weapon," the other dismissed it casually to his companion. The other agreed, and as soon as they finished putting everything in its place, they yawned, wanting to rest now that they had done their work. "Finally. We've traveled all night through the desert, we can finally rest, right?" one of them murmured, exhausted. "I hope so. I heard they're offering sandwiches in the cafeteria. Shall we grab some before sleeping?" his companion suggested. Before his companion could respond, Minato appeared among them, kicking both so quickly that they had no time to react or realize what was happening, as the boy landed on the ground with a body on his shoulder and the knocked-out ninjas hitting the floor right after. He made sure there was no one else there and began to survey his surroundings. It was a base full of rooms and corridors, but what was stranger was that they were underground somewhere in the desert. Hardly anyone would notice a base like this. Minato had to admit that it was clever to use such a place for poison production. His enemy would hardly find a place like this. Minato then began to think about how to act. His chakra reserves nearly depleted, which, in a way, was good. After all, the place should have sensors, and if they didn't detect a new chakra emerging, they would think it was just another common ninja from Suna. If they were specialists, they might even identify his chakra as different from the others, but that didn't matter now. Minato would use only stamina energy to confront them. He quickly swept through the entire base at that moment and knew where Chiyo was, seeing a woman who was in the laboratory filled with poison while performing more complex activities than the others. The woman sneezed at that moment. "Seems like someone is talking about me," was all she said as she continued making the poison. Meanwhile, Minato did not limit himself to the laboratory as he swept through everything, even the lower floors with some prisoners. He grew frustrated upon realizing that they were being used in experiments, and most of them were ninjas from Konoha. He stopped thinking about it and began to act. Some ninjas were passing through the corridor when suddenly, someone appeared in front of them, striking them with a precise attack, knocking them out instantly so quickly with his sorrow that they couldn't react. He still kept Sasori unconscious and moved forward, facing other ninjas who appeared in his path, surprised by the intruder. More and more enemies appeared, until they finally began to scream that there was an invader on site, but Minato defeated them one by one. He didn't kill anyone, as he still had no reason to do so at that moment as he continued to make his way to the laboratory before the whole base came after him. As he advanced, he encountered a group that was already prepared to face the invader. "Attack!" they shouted, launching several puppets contaminated with poison. Minato agilely dodged, moving between the puppets and reaching the ninjas with Saro and Jeppo, striking them with punches so strong that they fell to the ground, defeated the next moment. Minato continued on his path until he found the room full of poisons, where the woman he had monitored was. He entered the room with her quickly entering combat mode, already knowing about the invader, and all her assistants did the same. I don't know who you are, but you certainly got past everyone to get here. You must not be someone ordinary. I just wonder how you found this place, Chiyo said, clearly intrigued. However, her eyes widened upon seeing the person Minato was carrying on his shoulder. No, she exclaimed, immediately recognizing. Chiyo, it doesn't matter who I am. I'm here for the antidote to the poison, and now that you've recognized my hostage, we can negotiate, Minato spoke calmly, determined to get what he came for. Chapter 145 Infiltration 07. Third-person POV. Land of Sand, Year 38. Minato stared at Chiyo and her group while the woman was quite stunned with her grandson being taken as a hostage by the enemy. She internally questioned what to do now with this stranger, who by his voice, seemed very young. What do you want? Wait, is he poisoned? Chiyo asked, raising her voice as soon as she saw the red marks on Sasori's neck, becoming flustered. No, it's nothing personal, Minato replied. It's just a defense mechanism so you don't just destroy the place and guarantee me the poison. I'm here to negotiate. You give me the formula for the poison and the antidote, I want at least 3 vials of it, and I'll release your grandson. Fair, isn't it? Minato spoke with a firm tone. Chiyo narrowed her eyes, not liking this at all, but what else could she do? How did you get here so fast? You should be captured at this moment in the village. She didn't understand how Minato got here. Does it matter? Minato mocked. He sighed but still had some doubts. Why go so far? What you're doing is suicide. Wait, are you also infected? She was first surprised by this invasion entering the village through a disguise, surprised to see that Minato was infected on his arm. How can he be fine with an infected arm? But what shocked her more was the fact that the boy seemed perfectly fine while he should be writhing in pain and not being able to be well. After all, the poison consumed chakra all the time. It didn't make sense for him to enter an enemy base with those conditions, it was suicide. If Minato managed to get here, Chiyo knew he had defeated several guards, and Chiyo wondered what this boy was made of, since nobody could act like this after being infected. It doesn't matter now, Chiyo. Anyway, it's a pleasure to meet you. You are quite famous among us, after all your poisons have killed more Konoha ninjas than anyone else. Minato spoke calmly. You can bet on that, boy. Anyway, you want the poison and the cure? That's too much. If I give you the cure, that would put a war back into play. Chiyo said. Well, then you will see your grandson die. I can still hold on, but him. I doubt he will last much. Minato said, taunting. Chiyo immediately frowned, not liking his words. She cared about her family more than anything and would never let that happen. It was at that moment that several ninjas began to enter the room, surrounding Minato, making Chiyo more comfortable. You are at a disadvantage, boy. Better you hand over my grandson and I can guarantee that you leave Suna alive. She simply said, matching the threat, while Minato shook his head. Even if I'm surrounded, I still have your grandson's life in my hands. Hand over the poison and I promise he will live. Otherwise, you'll find out who is faster, your ninjas or me while I cut his throat, Minato replied with a firm tone. He was a ninja and would act as such to save his companion, despite knowing that none of this would happen. Chiyo seemed quite irritated, but nodded in the end. All right, boy, she said at the end, while the other ninjas looked at her, stunned. She didn't care about that, even if she had to work even harder, she wouldn't let her grandson die, she would never forgive herself for that. Despite everything, since she saw Minato threaten her family in this way, she would never forget him and would certainly avenge him, promising that he would not leave this place alive, so she didn't mind picking up the real scroll with the construction of the poison and the antidote, along with some vials of the latter in a drawer. Minato saw this and immediately made a clone. As the clone approached Chiyo and grabbed the items, opening the scroll and reading quickly while Minato continued with a kunai at Sasori's neck. The clone finished reading, although not being any expert, it could tell if it was real or not, and Chiyo handed over the real one. The clone went to the original who stored the scroll and took one of the vials. That's good. I appreciate that, Chio, he said at the end, his clone disappearing with Minato not putting much chakra into it given his condition. Now, release my grandson, she immediately requested. Minato shook his head. Not yet. I need to know if the antidote works, he said, picking up the vials and putting one to Sasori's mouth for him to drink unconsciously. As the liquid flowed down his throat, Minato could feel the boy's life force beginning to be restored. This is good, really good, Minato spoke satisfactorily. Surprisingly, he lifted Sasori with brute force and threw him to Chio, while surrounded by several ninjas. Chio did not expect something like this. After all, she thought he would use her grandson to escape, but he kept his part of the word. He didn't want to flee immediately either, as he still intended to rescue the prisoners being used in experiments there. The place fell silent for a moment, everyone attentive to what would happen next. Come on, what are you waiting for? Attack! Don't let him leave this place alive. One of the ninjas shouted, and quickly several others advanced against Minato. He dodged the first attack, spinning his body and delivering a kick to the back of the enemy's neck, dislocating it. Everyone launched their attacks against Minato at that moment in that small space of the laboratory, which he began to quickly dodge while his body spun among the ninjas. Chio was at a distance, seeing that her grandson was okay, before setting him aside and looking again, surprised to see Minato knocking down 3 more ninjas. This kid is not just anyone. Who is he? She murmured, seeing that he was as strong as a jonin. But she couldn't see his face right because of the clothing Minato wore as a disguise. We can't let him leave here alive, she finally said. Quickly, 2 scrolls were activated from her waist. Masks began to emerge from them as she opened them, materializing into bodies all dressed in white ninja clothes. Minato knocked down another ninja beside him and, at the same time, kicked another, while observing the 4 summons. They weren't as many as the puppets Chio faced Sasori with in Shippuden, but they were certainly all dangerous, more dangerous than any other puppet he had faced so far. Let's see if you can handle this, kid. Chio said and quickly moved her fingers, as the puppets flew at high speed towards Minato. Seeing this, Minato quickly grabbed a sword from a ninja who attacked him and prepared for the combat by getting into a fighting stance with ninjas and puppets coming from all sides, while most of the opponents wielded blades. The first attack came and Minato parried it. He then began to use, perhaps for the first time, the kenjutsu techniques he learned last with the members of the Hatake clan in the Phantom Division. The place quickly became engulfed in an intense battle. Minato used only his physical abilities from the 6 styles in kenjutsu to move throughout the space, gaining some advantage as he could use the air as a platform as he kicked to move. The attacks began and the white puppets were the most powerful, with Chio controlling these puppets masterfully. The battle was of high intensity, forcing the ninjas to retreat, while Minato ran through the air, parrying sword attacks. A puppet tried to punch him, but he dodged, almost disappearing, and reappeared on top of another puppet beside, slicing it in half, ending with the first of Chio's puppets. What? He defeated a puppet of Chio-sama? The shinobis murmured in shock, seeing that Minato was much stronger than they expected, and these white puppets were considered legendary. After all, Chio was the greatest user and puppetry expert in Sunakagure. Minato quickly parried attacks with the sword he had in hand while grabbing another vial of the antidote he had received. Even in the midst of the fight, he parried a sword with one hand and took the vial with the other. After finishing drinking, he returned to fight, as he needed to recover his chakra. Additionally, this made him feel relieved when the pain finally began to disappear and his chakra began to react immediately as the antidote took effect. Now he needed to wait a bit before starting to leave here. Suddenly, someone thought they saw an opening and threw a kunai with a paper bomb at Minato. What are you doing, you idiot? Chio exclaimed, irritated, as she saw how the boy had acted and even surrounded, fought as if he was aware of everything happening around him while he parried all attacks when not dodging them. It was a way of fighting she had never seen before, wondering how, besides being fast, the boy could even know about attacks trying to hit him in blind spots. It was chaos as sparks from blades began to scatter all over the place during the fight, with the boy continuing to move his arm rapidly. So it was no surprise when this stranger easily caught the kunai and threw it back at another ninja, who had no time to react as his neck was pierced. The next moment, an explosion erupted throughout the laboratory, and Minato advanced with his sword amidst the smoke of debris, fighting against the puppets that now had difficulty seeing due to the dust raised. He cut off the head of Chiyo's second puppet at this moment and advanced among the ninjas, taking down several of them as he moved towards the third white puppet, which had no time to react before its body was sliced in half. Seeing this, Chiyo quickly ordered her fourth puppet to retreat, as the room began to recover, but with no further sign of Minato as things began to calm down, with only Suna ninjas exclaiming amid the chaos. He had taken advantage of the chaos to leave the room behind. Where is he? Chiyo looked to one of the surviving ninjas, a censor. The ninja quickly closed his eyes and made a hand sign, scanning the area until finally locating him. He's heading to the prison, he declared. Take care of my grandson, was all Chiyo said before advancing with her last puppet. She couldn't understand how someone so young could be so strong, but she couldn't let him live or leave here with that scroll. After all, it would once again destroy Suna's advantage over Konoha with the new poison. Minato quickly moved through the prison, observing each of the cells. He began to free the prisoners, who screamed in pain and agony with their veins red spread across their bodies. This frustrated him a bit, but he quickly began to pull out a few ninjutsu scroll. Grabbing some seals, he placed them on the foreheads of the infected ninjas, making them faint instantly. He needed to first get the bodies inside the scrolls, but had to prepare for a while. As he didn't have much chakra, he quickly thought of doing the most urgent thing, while he blushed his finger and performed a summoning jutsu, as in front of him a toad appeared. Did you summon me? The toad asked. Yes, I want you to pass the scroll and antidote to Tsuna. Tell Jiraiya-sensei that I am sending this to save Tsuna and pass the scroll to his mother, Tsunade, having the construction of the poison and the recipe for the antidote for her to make immediately. Don't forget this, he immediately requested. All right. The toad was surprised by the demand, but seeing that his summoner was so serious, he put them inside his mouth and disappeared in smoke soon after. After that, the toad disappeared and Minato quickly created a clone to go meet the ninjas who were approaching, trying to buy some time for himself. Chiyo arrived with a team and came upon a ninja standing in front of them, a clone of Minato to be exact, and he quickly performed a jutsu in his hands, while a glow immediately appeared, blinding them the next moment. Ah! My eyes! Everyone exclaimed. Even Chiyo was caught off guard by the flash jutsu. Quickly, Minato began to put all the Konoha ninjas inside scrolls, after rendering them unconscious going cell by cell. When he finally decided to leave, he had rescued a dozen of them, but he couldn't put them in a toad as he did with the scrolls. His clone had been destroyed by then, and Minato faced Chiyo looking at him with a serious gaze, keeping her last puppet in front of her along with other ninjas. Well, it looks like now I have to get out of here. Minato murmured, knowing that all of Suna should be behind him at that moment. Chapter 146, Healing Suna. Third-person POV. Land of Sand, Year 38. Jiraiya was pacing back and forth with a nervous expression. Days had passed since he had requested any information from the border, yet there was still no news about Minato's movements, as if the boy had vanished. If he were invading the enemy camp or even the village, we would have noticed with the movements of the Suna ninjas at the country's edge, Jiraiya murmured to himself, still wondering if he should have really agreed to send his student, even though there had been no choice. Why did he have to risk everything by infecting himself with that poison? This shouldn't have happened. Jiraiya continued speaking to himself due to his highly nervous state, waiting for any news. You were supposed to be my destined pupil, you can't die like this. Minato. Jiraiya cursed himself. Sensei, Jiraiya looked up and saw two girls entering with distressed expressions. Jiraiya just sighed. I know what you're going to ask, but there has been no news of Minato since he passed the southern outpost. Not even the teams that were on missions in the Land of Rain have seen him, Jiraiya commented. They just remained silent for a while, and Jiraiya could see anger, sadness, despair, and fear on their faces. I understand. Makoto spoke as a tear streaked down from both eyes, turning away so no one could see. I'm leaving then. That was the only thing she said before leaving the tent. Hanabi saw this and seemed about to cry too. I'm going as well, sensei. Let me know if there's any news of Minato, whatever it is, she murmured. Yes, you can be sure that I will tell you anything, Jiraiya spoke seriously. He could only watch the worried girls leave. First, his friend Suna was still on the brink of death, thinking it couldn't be real. But when they learned from Jiraiya about Minato's condition, confirming that Minato had also contracted an infection from the poison, the girls were completely shattered when they heard this. And since then, they had been asking about him every day, but Jiraiya continued without news from the south. Jiraiya couldn't even just send a group to go after him, not without a signed order from the Hokage. Even so, not even the Hokage could sanction a rescue mission for a ninja on the verge of death. As he was lost in his thoughts, an explosion occurred beside him, making him look up in surprise immediately. He saw a toad appearing there while staring back at him. "Kosuke?" Jiraiya murmured, a tone of some hope evident since Minato might have sent some message. And that was exactly what happened. "Jiraiya, your student sent me," the toad spoke, confirming. Jiraiya felt elated. "Tell me what he said." The toad nodded. "He said he found a cure and has an antidote for someone named Suna. He made it clear it should only be for her. Here is also the composition of the poison and its antidote to manufacture," the toad spoke, while Jiraiya was dumbfounded and speechless with this, not imagining that Minato had really managed it after disappearing. "That's great. Where is he?" Jiraiya asked immediately. That was all he said. "It seems he was in the middle of a mess and with low chakra levels. Unless he summons me again, I don't know where the boy is or his current situation." "But he was rescuing prisoners," the toad responded. Jiraiya sighed a bit before grabbing the scroll and antidote. He had to rush to the medical camp immediately. "Thank you," he said to the toad, which disappeared in a puff of smoke. He then left and called the jonins at the camp. "I need 20 jonins with me now. Rank S mission," he ordered. All the volunteers emerged immediately. "Let's head to the medical camp now," Jiraiya said firmly. Despite being on the border and in their territory, where it was highly unlikely they would be attacked, he issued a rank S mission with a full escort of jonins. After all, he couldn't risk walking even 5 meters alone with all the information he had, and that could change the war against Sunakagure. Jiraiya and the team followed without any issues and arrived at the camp some time later. Tsunade was again in the room where her daughter lay. The poison had progressed beyond merely remaining in her arm, now moving toward her chest, almost reaching her heart, where it would be fatal. It was so prominent that it was visible through the clothing, one could see the red lines of her veins. "You should rest, Tsunade-sama," a nurse beside her spoke cautiously, while Tsunade gave her a stern look. "I'm fine," she said, but it was obviously a lie. She hadn't slept for days, her eyes showed she had been crying constantly, and there were almost no tears left to cry. Tsunade had never felt such pain as she did seeing her daughter on the brink of death. She asked herself if there was really nothing she could do but just watch her daughter die. It was at that moment she heard some commotion from behind, but she no longer cared about anything other than watching Tsuna suffer with her eyes closed. All she wanted now was to imprint every detail of her beautiful daughter in her memory before she could leave them. Her thoughts also went to the boy at this moment, shocking her to know that he had opened Tsuna's cylinder and let her get infected, knowing there was no cure and feeling sad for the boy who could also die trying to save her. But she had to admit, he had a lot of courage. "You had someone so special with you all along, it's a pity they have to go through this so young." She sighed, and tears once again streamed down her eyes. "Tsunade," Jiraiya's voice came from the other side of the room. "You shouldn't be in here," a nurse exclaimed to Jiraiya. "Tsunade!" Jiraiya called again, and Tsunade couldn't help but look angrily at him, still annoyed with her colleague, even in the death of her daughter. But what she saw next when she looked at him paralyzed her, as Jiraiya was holding up a vial to her with a scroll. "Here's the antidote, quick." Minato did it, he did it. And on the scroll is everything you need to manufacture more antidote as well. Jiraiya spoke with a firm tone. Tsunade looked at him oddly, not comprehending what she had just heard, as if in shock in hearing things. "What did you say?" she murmured, her voice faltering, looking at the vial. Minato succeeded. "This will save your daughter, quick." He spoke again. Tsunade took the vial with trembling hands and looked at it closely. Are you sure? This isn't some joke of yours, is it, Jiraiya? She looked at him, no longer with anger, but with the hope of a mother who could save her own daughter. Yes, if Minato said this is the antidote, then I trust my student, Jiraiya said firmly. Without a second thought, Tsunade turned her body with the vial, tearing off the cap and opening her daughter's mouth while pouring the antidote until the last drop. She didn't hesitate before doing something like this, because she also believed in Minato in the end. She stepped back a bit, trying to see any change. Her daughter had lasted longer than anyone else due to her Senju heritage. All other ninjas who had been poisoned with her had died, and 2 new batches of poison had appeared before also dying, while Tsuna still clung to life. But she wouldn't last much longer. She was working with all her might to try to heal her while the place filled up with a 4th batch of newly infected people coming from the south. She stood there, waiting for any sign of change, and Jiraiya was no longer asked to leave, also watching as the nurse combed the situation and went into the room as well. And it was after 10 minutes that Tsunade began to see the poison starting to recede, the chakra reacting and increasing in Tsuna's body. It's working, she immediately said, placing her hand over her mouth as more tears began to flow. It's working, she murmured once more, while Jiraiya, still standing, felt relieved with this and proud that Minato had done the impossible, once again. Tsuna is healing. The nurse, who was also present, was stunned as well. Tsunade continued, tears streaming from her eyes. She quickly began to diagnose, seeing the poison marks beginning to fade, and her vital energy returning. She wasted no time before leaping onto her daughter's face, embracing her tightly while crying like a baby at that moment. Yokata! She exclaimed, letting all her emotions flow. She stayed there for over 10 minutes, shedding tears. When she finally stood up, she wiped her face and looked at Jiraiya. Where is Minato? She asked immediately, wanting to thank him for saving her most precious asset. He couldn't come. He had to use a summoning to teleport the antidote. He's still in the land of wind, Jiraiya said with a sigh. Tsunade took in the words before looking at the nurse who was admiring Tsuna. Summon all the medics immediately. Let's study this scroll and start mass production of this antidote, she exclaimed immediately. The next moment, the entire medical camp became chaotic. The news of the new poison being cured spread quickly across the border, especially in the southern region. Everyone knew within a few hours that the medical camp had obtained the formula to cure the poison, and it also spread that a teenager had done such a thing on a suicide mission inside the land of wind, and he was still there. Once again, everyone was talking about Minato Namikaze, but this time, his name resonated more than ever, being considered a hero by all who spread the news, and it raised a question in all the camps. Will Konoha leave the boy who just saved thousands of lives in the course of the war on enemy lines? No one knew what would happen, but a certain group was gathering at this moment outside one of the camps. You all know very well that if we act like this, we could be considered traitors, right? Alpha asked his group. We have a comrade who is trapped in the land of wind. I'm not going to sit here while Lumum is stuck there. Zelda spoke. I agree with him. If we can't save a comrade after his incredible performance in achieving something, how can we call ourselves Konoha ninjas? The voice of Whisper was heard. Yes, my student needs me, let's help him of course. Ghost spoke. Your student, don't talk nonsense, but Minato is our comrade, let's make a path through those sand ninjas until we reach him, and even if he is captured now, we will rescue him and get him out alive from that place. Mirage expressed his thoughts. Since everyone is determined, let's act. Alpha decided, what they would do could end their careers, after all, they were on their own, but they wouldn't leave Minato alone in Tsuna. Chapter 147, The Hunt Begins. Third-person POV. Land of Sand, Year 38. Tsuna was still lying in her bed, motionless but much better after 3 days since receiving the antidote. The movement in the medical camp continued strong and intense as everyone worked to create the antidote and start treating all those who needed it. In the midst of this commotion, her closed eyes began to tremble, and she finally opened them for the first time, a little surprised, looking at the ceiling of the tent and wondering what had happened or where she was, waking up very confused about what had happened as she tried to stabilize her eyes with the light after days with them closed. Hmm. She groaned a little as she felt discomfort throughout her body, feeling it all numb, which caught the attention of a nurse passing by the area. Princess Tsuna. Tsuna heard a voice suddenly and looked to the side as a nurse approached her with a concerned and relieved expression at the same time. Tsuna was still dizzy and not understanding much, feeling a little disoriented. What happened? Wait, wasn't I? She finally had a shock of realization as all the memories came back, and her first thought was to check the poison while she looked at her arm with some effort, but there was nothing there anymore. How did I? She murmured as the nurse approached with a smile. I see you are well, Princess Tsuna. You are cured, we managed to get an antidote. She said, while Tsuna looked at her in astonishment. How? Wasn't there supposed to be a? Tsuna tried to speak, but her voice came out a bit hoarse due to the lack of liquids over the past few days. The nurse noticed this quickly, went to the bedside, filled a cup with drinking water, and handed it to Tsuna. Drink this, the nurse said. Tsuna drank quickly while returning her questioning gaze to the nurse. Well, if you really want to know why you are well, it was your friend, the nurse said, opening a very wide smile. What do you mean, my friend? Tsuna questioned. Minato Namikaze, the boy everyone is talking about. He infiltrated the village of Tsuna in search of the antidote. He really succeeded. Not only that, but he also took the scroll with the formula of the same antidote and managed to deliver it to us. Now, your mother and many doctors are working to produce it and start curing the patients starting today. Isn't it fantastic? Your friend is being considered a hero by everyone in the camp now. She said. He did that, for me? Tsuna sighed, emotional, but her voice faltered a little as she tried to respond. She still remembered the embarrassing moment she had with Minato, saying those words and revealing her feelings, thinking she was going to die. She didn't want to leave this world without confessing to him. At least, she would leave with a clearer and more sincere conscience. How am I going to face him? She exclaimed in terror within her mind. But her heart was warmed by the fact that he went to such lengths for her and saved her, and there was no way to avoid meeting her savior and the person she had intense feelings for as soon as possible. Where is he? She asked immediately, even though she was afraid to meet him now, as a part of her wanted to hide under the ground, while on the other hand, her heart continued to race as a blush appeared on her face. He's still in Tsuna, the nurse said. Tsuna immediately looked up, stunned. What do you mean he's still in Tsuna? From what I heard, he managed to pass the antidote and the recipe in a scroll with the data through a summoning, but the boy is still in Tsuna being pursued after whatever he did there, she said with a sad tone. No, this can't be, Tsuna murmured, feeling her heart even heavier. She wouldn't forgive herself if Minato didn't return because of her. She wasn't even aware of what he had done, putting the poison in his arm after taking hers. You need to calm down and rest, Princess Tsuna, the nurse emphasized. You just came back from death's door. I would even call your mother, but she's heading to a meeting at another camp specifically to talk about your friend. Don't worry, it seems the entire command is gathering at this moment. They will decide something together since a joint decision is equivalent to an order from the Hokage on this border. They will decide what to do regarding your friend, or should I say? After all, who would invade another country to save someone? She said at the end, but Tsuna didn't seem to pay much attention to those words. But? Tsuna murmured, trying to argue with her concern. No. Princess, you just came out of a bad state. You can't do anything now. I know you're worried. But you must wait, I'm sure they've decided the right thing to do. In the meantime, I'll call your father and uncle, who should be somewhere in this camp. I'm sure they will want to see you, the nurse said, leaving Tsuna there, not thinking much, while she felt a little empty, knowing that Minato could be in danger. Meanwhile, a meeting was taking place in one of the southern camps. All the commanders, from the first camp at the southernmost tip to the camp at the northernmost tip, being the 12th camp, were having a heated discussion in a tent surrounded by ninjas and their bodyguards. Among them were Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru, along with other leaders, including some that Minato already knew from having worked together while moving through the camps. Are you sure we should decide this here? One of the leaders asked. Why do the 12 commanders have this role of deciding things in place of the Hokage? And since our leader is fighting with an elder, Danzo, against the forces of Kiri in the east of the Land of Fire, we must do this ourselves. That's why we're gathered here, another leader said. Well, let's begin. The issue is no secret to anyone at this point. My student managed to infiltrate Suna, and now he's trapped after having brought the poison cure to the camp. But he had to stay there. The question is whether we should send a large group to rescue him, Jiraiya said. Sending a mission like that requires so many people. Should we make such a big move? Many ninjas will die just to save one. Can we do this? Another commander murmured. He seemed more rational than sentimental, despite knowing Minato and having worked with him. He had to think about the consequences. After what the boy has done. The north may not be affected, but thousands of people will be saved in the south because of his action. Tsunade raised her voice, as the poison affected more the camps below the border, as they were the ones fighting against Suna. But there are still many risks. Making a direct attack will require many resources, and we will sacrifice many ninjas, another emphasized, agreeing with the previous commander. We already have a team that went there without permission, another exclaimed. It's not that we can't do much, they were Minato's companions. He referred to the departure of the Phantom Division, who made the decision without anyone's order to invade the country, and everyone was already aware of this. So it seems that a small group is braver than most of us, a harsh and young voice was heard, as Jiraiya looked at Orochimaru at that moment, who had said those words, surprising everyone. I think he's right, another man said. Commander Janto, one of the first commanders Minato had worked with after entering the camp when Jiraiya had recommended he leave the northern camp for a while. Remember, the boy didn't just help with the poison. His actions are known to everyone. A boy who can fight against powerful opponents and even infiltrate an entire village. He helped in the southern invasion, avenged the northern invasion, saved countless ninjas while taking a forward post. He's young, but he's already strong and possesses great leadership skills. If he's not the future of Konoha, I don't know who else could be. And the question I ask you is, are we going to turn our backs on him? But more than anything, on one of our own? Wouldn't we be considered a bunch of cowards? Janto spoke, while everyone looked at each other, some with serious expressions, others lowering their heads in agreement, and others seeking the approval of the others. Well, we can't waste any more time. We have to decide, Jiraiya spoke again. We should start the voting. Our majority will be equivalent to an order from the Hokage. Remember that, he said. After all, this was a decision-making mechanism designed for emergency decisions without needing the Hokage. Raise your hands if you agree to send an attack to rescue the boy, Jiraiya finally said to start the voting. In the next moment, he, Tsunade, and Orochimaru immediately raised their hands, while others also began to raise their hands as well. One by one, everyone, without exception, voted in favor of the mission. Very well, it seems we've decided, Jiraiya continued. Let's formalize the document and prepare. Konoha will not stand still while a precious ninja is in enemy territory. As they began to mobilize, down south in the Land of Wind, Minato was inside a cave at that moment, in the middle of the desert. As soon as he sent the scroll and the antidote to Jiraiya, he fought Chiyo with her last puppet and quickly gained the upper hand. After fleeing from that base, he returned to the laboratory, grabbed other antidotes, now knowing what they were, and disappeared from the camp. Chiyo didn't seem happy about it, but at least she had her grandson safe with her. Now, he found himself here, doing well but a little tired, better off than all 6 Konoha ninjas with him after he rescued them and used the antidote on them so they wouldn't die along the way. They were all recovering now while Minato kept watch at the entrance of the cave, looking out for any enemy movement coming their way. Thank you, young man, one of the ninjas approached him and expressed gratitude after understanding the situation, hardly believing they were finally escaping that terror. I didn't expect to find you like this. Minato Namikaze, the young man who fought against Hanzo and the Four-Tails Jinchuriki, another said, surprising the others who didn't know this, though he knew these recent details about Minato before they were captured. Don't thank me yet. We still have to try to get out of this country alive, and I'm sure everyone will be looking for us, Minato said, not wanting to talk about his accomplishments now. He was now in the position of those ninjas he had hunted in the Land of Fire. Now, he was the one being hunted and had to escape, but with 6 people and his chakras still recovering, he couldn't teleport them, which made the situation dire. They needed to cross the entire country to escape. You're right, the ninja agreed with Minato's reasoning. Let's recover and start moving. This place won't stay hidden for long, and we need to act. Preferably, let's advance during the night since visibility will be better. So, get ready, Minato said as he released some supplies he always kept with him. Now his mission was to get out of this country. Meanwhile, not far from there, the Kazekage arrived at the underground laboratory where Chio was working. How could this happen? He exclaimed immediately. The boy invaded the country, took the necessary formulas with a hostage, and rescued the right people, simple as that. Chio replied in a calm tone, despite having put the entire war at risk with this loss. Now there was nothing else to do but work harder to find another poison. That doesn't matter now, a subordinate interrupted. The boy must still be hiding in the desert. We need to capture him with everything he stole. We cannot let him leave the country at any cost. Issue my order, I want all of Suna's forces after him, and bring the Jinchuriki as well. He said immediately. He didn't know that Minato had already sent the items to the Land of Fire, and knowing who the boy was, he was ready to use significant forces to fight against him. The ninjas of Suna then began to move. The hunt for Minato Namikaze had just begun. Chapter 148 Operation Escape from the Land of the Winds 01. Third-person POV. Land of Sand, Year 38. I think it's time for us to start moving, Minato murmured, looking into the darkness of the night. He took a deep breath, feeling a bit better now as his body was naturally recovering from the effects of the poison. He was more than ready to start acting. I want everyone to follow me. We must be careful of any enemies in sight, even at night. So, try not to appear in open fields, he warned before turning back to the ninjas behind him, who nodded in agreement. He then continued, you too, he said to 2 ninjas in the group. You said you specialize in earth-style jutsu, right? Minato asked one of the ninjas, and they confirmed. I want you to do the following. When we encounter a large group of enemies, I want you to hide underground along with the others while I deal with them, since I'm in a better condition than you. Minato explained. Wait, you're going to fight the enemy alone? I don't think we're going to let that happen. We're grateful you saved us, but let us be useful too, one of them immediately protested. But Minato shook his head. I'll be fine. I'm stronger than you, and I don't say that out of arrogance. If you really want to get out of here alive, leave this to me, Minato said, as if he wasn't talking to adults twice his age or more. But the man didn't seem satisfied with that and was about to protest again until another ninja in the group touched his shoulder and shook his head negatively. Let the boy do what he says. He's the one who got us out of there. If he believes this is the best way to get out, then we should trust his words, the ninja said. After all, if it weren't for Minato, they would still be there, being used as test subjects while screaming in pain. In the end, Minato looked out at the completely dark desert. There was no moon in the sky, which made their escape much easier. He raised his hand and pointed forward, quickly leaping across the desert dunes, trying to avoid areas where he might appear on the horizon. Of course, he couldn't avoid them all, but he would do his best not to attract the attention of other patrols. His observation haki could also help, and it was no different this time. 20 minutes later, running at high speed, with the sand exploding under their feet with every step they took, they advanced. Minato sensed something and simply raised his hand, and they all stopped behind him. There are at least 20 enemies beneath the sand, more than 2 kilometers from here. I want you to hide. I'll leave a clone, and when the clone disappears, it means the fight is over, Minato said, knowing he could cancel the clones remotely. The ninjas nodded, silently creating a hole around them with a few seals, beginning to descend as a layer of earth covered them from above. Minato sighed as he looked ahead, advancing while his feet began to use the air as a platform as he ascended into the sky. He knew that if he used his fire, lightning, or even wind jutsus with large explosions, he would be seen from miles away, which would reveal his position. He had to find a way to confuse the enemy around this desert so they wouldn't focus solely on this point where he was. After all, there was no way he could pass by these ninjas without drawing attention. So, reaching a good height above them, he took his unique kunai and threw it while making seals, causing it to multiply with the shadow clone jutsu, and hundreds, if not thousands, of kunai fell to the ground, burying themselves at various points in that location. He quickly advanced downward, landing with an explosion. "Come out! I know you're hiding!" he shouted, and the next moment, several puppets began emerging from the ground, revealing swords in their hands and advancing toward Minato, who quickly dodged them with flips and movements that only a skilled taijutsu ninja could perform. But these puppets stirred up the desert sand and began advancing on Minato. Meanwhile, the ninjas beneath the sand continued to monitor the fight against Minato and quickly began communicating. "It's him. We must inform Kazekage-sama. Go, alert him quickly to give the signal," one of the ninjas said underground, while the companion nodded. While most of them advanced to confront Minato, watching him swiftly dodge dozens of swords that tried to cut him, the last one began to use a jutsu that moved underground, distancing himself from the fight. "Be careful with those kunai. He can probably use his teleportation as we've heard," one of the ninjas warned, while paying attention to the kunai with strange symbols and maneuvering his puppets to cut some of them. Minato quickly noticed that there was a ninja trying to escape underground. He knew he needed to finish this quickly. Minato disappeared from the midst of the puppets and reappeared in front of the ninjas in an instant, leaving the puppets behind. "Damn, he really used the fast teleportation," one of the ninjas exclaimed, trying to retreat. Before they could react, Minato was already upon them, using a kunai to kill the first and then advancing toward the other 18 of them. "We need to be faster than this. Do something that can emit light, that will call for reinforcements," they exclaimed, but none of them had fire or lightning elements to attract attention in the darkness of the night. Perhaps it was a disadvantage for them, but they thought of another alternative. One of the ninjas pulled out an explosive tag attached to a kunai and aimed it at the boy who was fighting against other ninjas, killing them before reaching the others. This immediately gave Minato an idea. As soon as the explosive tag was thrown, he caught it in the air before it exploded and teleported it to another location, making it disappear the next moment and causing a distant explosion. By doing this, he attracted the attention of all the ninjas in the region. More explosive tags followed, and Minato quickly grabbed them and teleported to various points where he had placed marks. This would create a distraction for the enemies. He realized that he could use this to his advantage. After all, not all the ninjas would come after him here. "He's using this to his advantage," one of the ninjas murmured, and Minato smiled. "If you're not going to throw those at me anymore, then I'll have to use this," Minato said, pulling out several kunai with explosive tags and making them disappear, causing the horizon to start glowing at multiple points. "Now let's finish them in the middle of this explosion," he murmured, and in the next moment, Minato shone, reappearing in front of the ninjas with an explosion of light. Unable to react, he began to attack them. "What is this?" one of the ninjas managed to murmur before being killed by Minato, who moved like a beam of light, leaving them no time to react. Thus, he eliminated everyone there, even those who tried to flee upon seeing his power, without giving them time to respond. After eliminating the last one, Minato looked ahead, seeing a Konoha ninja stunned, holding the body of the one who tried to escape. Minato sighed, realizing that there was no way to hide the power of his Akuma no Mi. "Well," Minato began, "you caught him. I appreciate it, even though I had asked you to stay hidden." He spoke with a raised eyebrow. "Sorry about that. It's just that I'm also a censor, and when I saw him escaping underground, I didn't think twice about trying to help," the man said, still a bit cautious. "Don't worry about whatever you did there. I promise I won't tell anyone," he said in the end. Minato just nodded, while bringing his hands together in a seal and dispelling the clone underground. Along with the other ninjas, they quickly emerged and advanced to join Minato and the other. He addressed the group. "I had to use some jutsus that emit light, but I also used some distractions throughout the desert. At least we can be sure that not all of Suna's ninjas will come after us. Now we can move quickly, Minato said, and everyone nodded. Meanwhile, a man stood on a high rock in the middle of the desert, looking around, searching for anything that might catch his attention, until he saw a sudden explosion, dominating a faint glow on the horizon. Before he could react, another glow appeared, this time even stronger, indicating that the explosion was closer. Then, more explosions began to appear. Minato had continued teleporting all the explosive tags to various places, while the man there was stunned by it. Damn, he's trying to distract us. That kid is smart. Everyone split into several squads. Reinforce the entire border so they can't escape and go check all the explosions and report anything back to me. Understood, the man exclaimed, still unsure of where Minato was. But his gaze shifted to one side, where an explosion seemed more yellow, different from all the others. I'm not sure if it's there, but that explosion stands out easily among the others. Let's go there. And you, he pointed to a group of ninjas, go to the other side, east of the country, and call for reinforcements. Make sure that ninja doesn't try to cross into the land of fire directly, he ordered. In the next moment, they began to act. The ninjas advanced, checking each of the explosions to make sure Minato wasn't in any of them. Meanwhile, this man, who was none other than the village leader, the third Kazekage, headed towards the different explosion, the one that seemed more suspicious. Of course, there were many other ninjas scattered across the desert now, while the Konoha group continued advancing north, trying to take a route below the camps to enter the land of fire and avoid dealing with the main camp or re-entering the land of rain. Even so, they continued with the same plan. Minato eventually accepted the help of the Earth-style ninja, who assisted in capturing any other enemy ninja that appeared, while Minato released his kunai to face the pursuers, using Winjutsu that was less conspicuous, though there were still many explosions. Seeing more and more explosions ahead, the Kazekage nodded, realizing he was on the right track. We're going to catch that boy, he murmured. Minato already felt a sense of urgency, looking at the empty desert and then ahead. We won't make it in time, he murmured, still with a long distance before his pursuer would reach them. He could escape, but he wouldn't abandon his companions. Let's keep going as far as we can, he said, and the others nodded. Even though the odds were against them, they had to try, and they advanced quickly, trying to reach the border. Minato knew he couldn't abandon them. It was at that moment that Minato sensed his enemy was already there. Damn, they've caught up with us, he murmured, as suddenly an explosion appeared in front of them, creating a black wall blocking 50 meters high and 200 meters long ahead of them. The small pieces of iron began to form, locking together, creating a pitch-black barrier. So, this is it, Minato murmured, as he saw the man rounding the wall, jumping over it. Landing in front of them with his Kage hat, Raza and Kai, Chiyo's son, who came to reinforce the pursuit with a ninja group brought from the main camp, and a man covered in seals all over his body, looking lifeless ahead, immediately sensing the creature inside him. Well, this isn't so bad. I thought an army would come here. Minato murmured, with Suna advancing with just a small group. This gave him plenty of time and speed for them. Are you Minato Namikaze? Suddenly, Kai's voice broke the silence, looking at Minato with a fierce gaze as he drew his sword. The man was a powerful kenjutsu user and pointed it at Minato. You will pay for deceiving us, Konoha spy, he said. And you also poisoned my son. We need to review the facts, man. Don't be so angry. Spies show up in all the camps of all the nations all the time. Just because you were fooled doesn't mean you can stand there complaining, since the world is unfair, Minato said, making Kai frown. He's trying to provoke you, the Kazekage spoke this time, looking seriously at Minato. You are certainly very skilled, boy. There are many stories about you, even though you've operated more in the north than in the south. It seems the stone village has some fear of you, the Kazekage calmly commented. Well, I'm flattered by the compliments, Kazekage. You are the third Kage I've encountered. I hope to see the others in this war, Minato said. After all, he still had the third Mizukage and the third Raikage to meet, and he would be pleased to see them fighting in this war as well, despite his official position being on the western border. It's a shame, boy, that you won't leave here alive. "We'll take the poison and make sure your Hokage can't hold a funeral with your body when we're done with you," he said as the black iron sand began to move on that wall. Even Raza pulled out a scroll from his sleeve, ready to summon his golden sand, or rather, the gold. If you're wondering about the poison, it's already in Konoha's hands. Even if you manage to eliminate us, the advantage has already shifted to Konoha at this point. And given Chiyo's history, she always takes time to create a new poison, and you just released this one. So, Konoha will have a significant advantage in the coming months, or even this entire year, Minato mocked, as the Kazekage glared at him, gritting his teeth. So be it, then. He truly believed the boy's words. After all, he has the teleportation jutsu, but there's no point in arguing about it. He would just kill Minato and check if he was telling the truth or not. Then, the black sand began to flow, passing over them and advancing, while the golden sand did the same. Kai prepared his sword, while the Kazekage commanded his ninjas. "Pay attention to this fight," the Kazekage ordered. "He's already fought against many high-level enemies and even against a Jinchuriki. It's time to see the terror of a Bijou," he said. In the next moment, the ninjas there began to make seals on the man's body, who just stood there, watching, seeing his life coming to an end to fully release the Shikaku. Chapter 149 Operation Escape from the Land of the Wind 02. Third-person POV. Land of Sand, Year 38. The sun was rising on the horizon at this moment, and the desert began to be illuminated. "Hey, what are they doing?" One of the ninjas beside Minato commented, dazed, seeing several seals from that man being altered. "They are releasing the seal. It looks like they're going all out now," Minato grumbled in a bad mood as he watched the enemy. The man around the ninjas, who was being manipulated, had an empty and sad look, seemingly aware of his impending death, and in the next moment, the seals on his body began to glow. "Ah!" He started to scream, shouting loudly, as if he was feeling immense pain. After all, a monster would emerge from him in the next moment. "I sense a massive amount of chakra. Is he a Jinchuriki?" The Earth Element Sensor ninja finally realized, exclaiming in a scared tone. "Yes, they are releasing his bijou," Minato replied with a sigh but appeared very calm. However, that was just on the surface because he knew the situation was dire. The chakra he had recovered was still minimal, and he wasn't concerned about himself since he had his own survival methods. What worried him were his companions. "What should I do?" he murmured in his mind, cornered by the situation. But it also gave him an idea. Should I try that? He questioned himself, thinking about his latest research, which involved a different way of concentrating Fuinjutsu and combining it. Analyzing the situation, he quickly bit his finger, making a cut with his teeth, and the blood began to drip. He spread it in a straight line over his right arm. "Let's see if this will really work." He quickly began drawing a series of seals with his own blood. "Hey, what are you doing?" One of the Konoha ninjas looked at Minato in surprise. "I'm taking advantage of the time while Shikaku was emerging from his Jinchuriki," Minato replied as he finished making all the seals. This combination was something found in Mito's documents, a technique developed by the Uzumaki clan itself, but classified as a forbidden Fuinjutsu since it was incomplete and full of drawbacks when used. He had only studied this technique, wanting to replicate it in a new version without the disadvantages, but without having tested it even once, he had no choice but to use it. After all, he wanted to at least get the Konoha ninjas out of there and save them. Let's see what happens. It'll take a while for the seal to activate. After all, it's analyzing my chakra to filter out any coming from outside, otherwise, I could die. Minato murmured, looking at the seals drawn with his blood, now fixed on his skin. He moved forward while the bijou was about to emerge and crossed his fingers. "Shadow Clone Jutsu," he exclaimed, and 10 clones appeared side by side. Meanwhile, the Kazekage and his companions were watching Minato closely, waiting to see if he would do anything, but it was already too late. The Jinchuriki began to swell, his stomach pushed forward by the massive amount of chakra surging out of him, and Shikaku's skin started to burst outward. The monster ascended into the sky, transforming into its full form, covering everything above them, while its feet touched the ground, creating a tremendous explosion throughout the desert. "I'm free!" Shikaku exclaimed joyfully, raising its hands. Minato seized the opportunity and quickly started throwing kunai in all directions, hitting various points, even Shikaku's skin, though the beast didn't feel it. Move away from the kunai. The Kazekage defended himself easily, using an iron wall to block them and quickly distancing himself so the boy wouldn't appear on one of the kunai and catch them by surprise. Let's just observe for a bit and see how he handles this, the Kazekage suggested, watching Minato and the other Konoha ninjas from afar. Now that I'm free, what should I do now? Shikaku murmured, finally looking around the desert, thinking about what he would do. He was contemplating revenge against the Suna ninjas for locking him up for nearly 40 years. He turned his head until he stopped when he saw the group of Konoha ninjas. "HM? Have you come to admire the great Shikaku?" he asked, raising an eyebrow while the Konoha ninjas looked quite frightened. "Damn, this is dangerous. Should we run?" One of the ninjas cried out in fear, looking for any escape, but in front of them was the giant monster, and behind them, powerful ninjas preventing their flight. Minato kept his eyes on everything, analyzing where his kunai had fallen. As Shikaku seemed to notice their fear, he decided to vent his rage and hatred on the first ninjas he saw. "Ah, so you're here to face the great Shikaku, the most powerful Bijou. Prepare to die quickly." The monster roared with a cruel smile. "Now, take this." He started laughing before lifting his head and sucking in all the morning air while his stomach grew, accumulating wind. "This is bad," Minato murmured, knowing that Shikaku's wind jutsu could easily wipe out the entire group, as it was extremely powerful. He quickly moved forward, unable to conserve chakra any longer. His original body began to rise into the air with Jeppo, while Minato opened his hand, focusing on his jutsu. "Hey, what is he doing?" asked one of the Suna ninjas from the other group, seeing Minato advance directly towards Shikaku. "Does he intend to go head-to-head with the Bijou's jutsu?" "I'd like to see that," the Kazekage himself commented. After all, it usually took dozens of jonins to stop Shikaku's techniques. It had taken at least 1,000 ninjas to stop the Bijou when it was used in the First War. So, he watched with interest as Minato advanced. Minato, leaping through the air, began to gather pure rotating chakra around his hand, which quickly grew into a giant ball. The Bijou finally turned, surprised to see the light in front of it. Minato was carrying his enormous Rasengan to stop it. Shikaku didn't even speak, as it couldn't while its cheeks were puffed up with the power of the wind it was accumulating. It simply pointed at Minato, seeing only an insect trying to challenge it, and punched its stomach, generating a gust of wind that surged forward from its mouth. "Udama Rasengan!" Minato exclaimed, launching his jutsu against the Bijou's power. The two attacks collided, creating a shockwave that made the entire desert blow violently. Is he really doing this? The Kazekage was incredulous, unable to believe that a boy was facing a Bijou head-on. "Damned!" Shikaku murmured, trying to force its power against the small human. Suddenly, the vacuum ball battling the blue chakra began to cave in. The wind was retreating, and the Bijou was stunned. What? It was confused, seeing the giant Rasengan advancing, breaking through its jutsu. Seeing this, it raised a hand to strike Minato from behind the jutsus, trying to salvage its attack, but it was too late. The Udama Rasengan advanced, and Minato didn't stop. He reached Shikaku's head with a speed faster than the Bijou's. The blow was precise, exploding the creature's head. "Ah!" Shikaku screamed, being thrown backward. The impact was so great that the Bijou was launched hundreds of meters away, while a cloud of smoke and debris was lifted. "This is bad." The Kazekage was truly surprised by what he saw. "Leave him to me." A person from the group spoke and dashed forward at high speed. Minato was proud that his jutsu had an effect on the Bijou, throwing it far away, even though it was, in his opinion, the weakest of the Bijou, contrary to what it proclaimed, calling itself the strongest Bijou. Minato couldn't deny that it was strong. As he descended to the ground that had been flattened by the Bijou's body earlier, someone appeared at high speed. It was Kai, with his sword in hand, launching himself at Minato. The blonde ninja quickly grabbed a kunai and clashed with the sword. However, Kai was fast and slashed through the air as Minato dodged, trying not to get hit, while watching in slow motion as the enemy's sword was infused with wind chakra. Minato quickly spun his body as Kai launched another slash, but Minato dodged with this movement. The boy leaped to the side, grabbing another kunai, trying to catch Kai off guard, but the man was skilled and blocked the attack with his sword. Minato didn't fall behind, his kunai glowing with lightning chakra, and he clashed with Kai again. This time, Minato didn't lose the kunai as he infused it with lightning chakra, spinning his kunai with an electric hum as it glowed. Wind and lightning chakra collided, generating a small explosion. "I admit, you're skilled, boy, but you will die here," Kai said, trying to strike Minato as they exchanged blows with their weapons. At that moment, Minato's clones began to act, advancing to catch Kai. However, before they could get close, iron swords started to be launched. They hit the clones, turning them into smoke before they could reach Kai. The Kazekage, who was nearby, began manipulating his iron sand, forming several weapons ready to be launched to finish Minato off, since not even a Bijou had managed to do so. Minato was the next target. As the weapons flew toward him under the Kage's command, he dodged the iron sand weapons and defended himself from Kai's attacks. The weapons flew past his body, one even grazing his face, revealing light instead of blood, but Minato kept going, as he couldn't afford to reveal his chakra. "You bastard! I'll crush you, you cursed human!" Suddenly, Shikaku's voice echoed across the desert. The Bijou reappeared, furious and full of energy. In the next moment, Shikaku inhaled deeply and spat a blast of chakra across the battlefield from a distance, with Minato unable to do anything as he continued fighting and sensing the danger of the attack. "This is bad. Get out of there, Kai!" the Kazekage exclaimed as he began to raise a shield around himself to protect him and the others. Kai started to leave immediately. "You're not going anywhere!" Minato exclaimed. Seeing the situation, he quickly transformed his body into light and advanced. He grabbed Kai by the clothes as he tried to flee and pulled him back. Kai looked shocked, seeing his body being dragged back into the Bijou's attack range, not knowing how Minato had appeared behind him, since he had made sure he wasn't near any kunai with seals. "You won't escape that easily," Minato said, kicking Kai into the center of the attack, using him to eliminate him. Minato and Kai couldn't even react as the cannonball finally hit the spot where Kai was, and an enormous explosion occurred the next moment, with a vortex of wind erupting in the area, carving into the ground. The explosion swept across the entire area. Even the Konoha ninjas, who were quite far away, were caught and thrown back in fear. Minato simply vanished, and Kai met a very unfortunate fate. He felt the pressure inside, being crushed, his body collapsing under it. It didn't take long for Kai to fall to the ground with several broken bones, the whole place echoing with the sound of the explosion. As the Konoha ninjas struggled to get up. "What happened? Minato, is he okay after taking that? I can't find any trace of his chakra signature." The ninjas quickly murmured in fear of what had happened to their comrade. The next moment, as the dust began to settle, the Kazekage dissolved his iron shield, protecting Raza and the other companions. They were stunned, seeing that Kai hadn't managed to escape, and now they spotted his body in the middle of a crater, but there was no sign of Minato. Shikaku approached, trying to check if the one who had attacked him had been hit. "Where is he? I hope his body is in pieces," he exclaimed with his irritating voice. "This is bad," the Kazekage said. "We need to get Kai's body quickly," he ordered, and Raza touched the ground at that moment. Kai's body, lying in the middle of the crater, was grasped by a hand of golden sand and pulled underground, as Raza brought him back. Shikaku appeared at the edge of the crater, now searching for any sign of Minato. The Kazekage glanced at the Bijou and narrowed his eyes, looking upwards. "Let's get the Konoha ninjas," he decided, moving forward, trying to ignore Shikaku. After all, he would have to deal with Minato, and he snuck around, unnoticed, to capture the Konoha ninjas who were still trying to recover. This was the chance to eliminate or use them. And as the Kazekage noted, that was when Minato reappeared, descending from the sky. Shikaku felt someone land on his nose at that moment. Minato noticed the Kazekage's movements and knew he had to act quickly, but he was calm since the time for his Fuinjutsu to activate had already passed. His arm began to glow, and finally, his seal started to take effect. "What are you doing on my nose, you damned pest?" Shikaku shouted, furious. Minato smiled. "Well, I'm just passing by, is it alright if I borrow a bit of your chakra?" Chapter 150 Operation Escape from the Land of the Winds 03. Third-person POV. Land of Sand, Year 38. "What are you doing here on my nose, you damn bastard?" Shikaku shouted, furious. Minato smiled. "Well, I'm just passing through, it's okay if you lend me some of your chakra, right?" "What did you say, you bastard?" Shikaku immediately exclaimed, glaring at the human on his nose with anger, not liking his arrogance in speaking such words. "Well, that doesn't matter now," Minato said, and before Shikaku could do anything, he advanced toward his forehead. As he raised his hand full of red Fuinjutsu symbols, he struck the sand, which acted as Shikaku's skin, like a lightning bolt, and in the next moment, red chakra started to seep from it, flowing into Minato's hand. This? He couldn't help but be surprised as he felt the bijuu's energy euphorically, but he also felt intense pain, as the combination of Fuinjutsu was filtering the bijuu's chakra to adapt to his own. That's why he had taken time to prepare this technique, to align his chakra's frequency before drawing from an external source and replenishing his own. Not to mention, it was bijuu's red chakra, entirely different from any chakra produced by human bodies, so the pain was even greater. Despite the immense pain hitting him, Minato didn't let go of his hand and continued, gritting his teeth to relieve the pain while maintaining the technique to recharge his chakra reserves. "Hey, you bastard!" Shikaku exclaimed, quite surprised. "You're stealing my chakra," he shouted after realizing it, unable to believe what was happening, while shaking his head side to side, trying to get Minato off his face like any animal would with an intruder. But the boy persisted, holding firm until he knew he had absorbed enough chakra. He didn't want to go beyond that, as the pain was immense. "Hey, what is he doing?" the Kazekage couldn't help but murmur, approaching the Konoha ninjas. But he looked back as soon as he heard Shikaku's words, seeing him shouting across the desert and spotting Minato stuck on his head, doing something the Kazekage couldn't understand, but clearly irritating Shikaku. "I'll kill you!" Shikaku roared, furious at seeing his energy being drained, even though the amount Minato was absorbing was minuscule compared to his full chakra strength. Still, Shikaku didn't like it at all, as he had his pride, after all. Minato was quickly surrounded by sand as Shikaku reacted, covering his body and squeezing tighter and tighter, but Minato held his position. "Just a little more," he murmured, feeling Shikaku begin to crush him, trying to smash him with the sand. But Minato wasn't just anyone, and he still managed to hold firm. He was still trapped within the sand, his body not even entering the light state due to the natural toughness of his form, but he knew it wouldn't last much longer and that he could lose the jutsu if he turned into light. However, in the next moment, he felt he had enough to do what he desired. "Die! Die! Die!" Shikaku screamed, shaking his head, while Minato was now completely covered in pure sand. Shikaku hadn't even used his arms yet, but he decided to do so now, moving one to strike directly at where Minato was, with Shikaku unable to use his sand to push him away. As the hand struck, Shikaku checked to see if he had crushed him, but what he found was nothing. Minato had disappeared, with the sand collapsing around nothing. "What?" Shikaku murmured, not knowing what had happened. At that moment, the Kazekage and his group continued advancing. He began forming black iron swords and hurled them toward the Konoha ninjas trying to retreat. "Quick! Dodge!" a ninja immediately exclaimed as the projectiles closed in on them. Almost everyone managed to dodge, but not all were lucky. One was hit in the leg, and another had their stomach pierced. "Ah! My leg!" Both cried out as they fell to the ground, injured. "This is bad." They were hit. Their comrades looked at them, shouting with furrowed brows. They hadn't even recovered from the torture with poison they'd endured, and now the situation had worsened, with a Kage present alongside a bijuu, and not even Minato could handle everything at once. But what they didn't know was that a certain boy had now regained part of his chakra, while the sand ninjas passed through the area where Minato had thrown kunai, with some still remaining after all the chaos. The Kazekage was preparing for another attack, aiming to take down more of those ninjas, but he didn't even have time to realize what was happening. Minato reappeared beside him through a kunai he'd thrown, while the Kazekage had no time to raise his black sand for protection. A bright light illuminated the scene as Minato appeared with a Rasengan, leaving the Kazekage in shock. In the next moment, Minato thrust his arm forward, hitting the Kazekage's arm, creating an explosion amidst the sand, and sending the Kazekage's body flying away. Kazekage-sama, his Suna ninjas couldn't believe what they were seeing, while Minato quickly distanced himself, moving toward the Konoha ninjas, wanting to take advantage of the moment. "Listen, I'm sending us all to Konoha. Please, hold on to me and grab the injured one," Minato said as he approached the ninja with the stomach wound, the most serious injury, while the others quickly gathered around, one carrying the one with the injured leg. "Great!" Minato glanced at the confusion in the Suna group and the Bijou, seizing the opportunity to perform his seals, completing a more complex form of the second Hokage's jutsu. In the next moment, all the Konoha ninjas disappeared, with them looking at Minato in surprise, for except for the one who had applied the technique, they had all been sent to the medical camp hundreds of kilometers away. Minato had lied when he said everyone was going to Konoha, as he would have exhausted his last chakra reserves doing so, not wanting to deal with people saying they wouldn't leave without him. It was in that moment, alone, that he felt a sharp pain in his arm and began to realize that all his chakra reserves were dwindling. This was a side effect of the technique he had used. It was a forbidden, suicidal technique that a ninja used when they needed to escape a situation, either to take down an enemy or save their comrades, as a last resort. The technique allowed the user to take chakra for themselves, but only for a few seconds of action, and soon after, their chakra reserves would completely drain. That's what had happened to Minato, who felt a sharp pain in his arm as the few ninjutsu symbols faded, his skin returning to normal. The place fell silent for a moment, except for the desert wind and the chaos Shikaku was causing as the sand swirled around his feet. In one corner, the Kazekage emerged from where he had been thrown, covered in black sand, looking at Minato with frustration. The arm that had been hit by the Rasengan hung limp, likely broken from the impact. "That brat! I can't believe I fell for a trick from a child. He even took all his comrades and sent them somewhere with that damn symbol," he said, looking at the kunai scattered across the desert, but his gaze fell on Minato again with some satisfaction. "But it seems he's the only one who stayed behind," he said, as he tried to stabilize his injured arm with iron sand to keep it immobile until he could receive treatment. The Kazekage glanced back at Minato once more, sensing his chakra fading away. "He's losing all of his chakra," Raza murmured beside him. "Yes, he's dead," the Kazekage commented. "Where are you, you idiot? Show yourself." Shikaku's voice echoed through the area as he was about 500 meters away, quickly searching for Minato, until he looked ahead, towards the group of Suna ninjas and Minato standing beyond them. "You bastard!" Shikaku shouted, breathing deeply, preparing to launch an attack against Minato once again. This human had infuriated him in so many moments. "We should leave," the Kazekage murmured, seeing what was about to happen. He didn't want to be caught in the imminent attack from Shikaku. "Without chakra, at least the boy will die. It's a shame it wasn't me who did it," the Kazekage muttered, still craving revenge for his broken arm. Minato merely watched the scene unfold as the Suna ninjas retreated and Shikaku prepared to unleash his strike, puffing up his cheeks and belly. The situation was becoming more complicated, and Minato knew that this battle had already drawn the attention of ninjas hundreds of kilometers away, who were likely heading towards the area. "It's time to act. Even if there are witnesses," Minato murmured. He stood up, facing Shikaku without fear, as the beast continued charging its attack, staring intently at the monster. Shikaku, in turn, finished absorbing air and struck his own belly, aiming at Minato. A massive ball of wind and vacuum was launched toward him, closing in like a bullet and hitting the spot. In the next moment, the entire area within a 300-meter radius exploded, causing immense destruction. Dust and debris began to spread, with thick smoke and the sound of the explosion echoing across the desert. Even 700 meters away, outside the blast range, the Suna ninjas had to shield their faces with their hands to protect themselves from the impact of the attack. "Is he dead?" Raza asked, looking at the scene, astonished. "The boy has no more chakra. It's impossible for him to have survived that," the Kazekage replied with satisfaction, before turning his attention back to Shikaku. "Now we have to deal with this bijou. I want you to bring one of our prepared vessels to seal the bijou," he ordered his comrades at the end. After all, the Sand Village kept strong bodies, trained from childhood, prepared to become Jinchurikis in the future, with several of them stored in reserve, just in case they needed to use Shikaku. Unlike other villages that tried to control their bijou, the Sand Village sacrificed the Jinchuriki and unleashed Shikaku to cause chaos. Once everything was over, they would grab one of those vessels, as they were called in the village, and after controlling Shikaku, they would seal him into this new body. But most of them weren't very durable, only slightly better than normal, and they had to pass the bijou from body to body when the vessel reached its limit after a few years. These lives were easily discarded in the village, with the only option being to serve their village and die for it under the orders of the superiors. It was a harsh system, but this was how the Sand Village dealt with its bijou. The bijou itself seemed very happy at the moment. "Ha ha ha ha! You felt the power of the great Shikaku." The bijou began to shout, looking satisfied at all the destruction it had caused, knowing Minato had been hit. But as Shikaku celebrated, the Sand Ninjas were about to leave to carry out the Kazekage's mission. Suddenly, a light illuminated the morning, causing everyone to immediately look at a line of light rushing straight toward the bijou. "What is that?" Shikaku murmured, as the line of light stopped at the tip of his nose, emitting the sound of plasma, and then materialized into Minato, completely fine and smiling at the bijou. "That was a nice hit, but not enough to stop me, Shikaku." Minato mocked. "What, impossible? What are you, insect?" Shikaku roared, shocked. How did he do that? Even the Kazekage was surprised, not understanding what had happened. In the next moment, a bright flash erupted from Minato's body, so intense that it outshone the morning sun, far stronger than his light jutsu. This was, after all, the pure power of his Akuma no Mi. Then, everyone heard the scream of a wounded animal. "My eyes!" Shikaku exclaimed, feeling immense pain. Even as a bijou, an immortal being, he had never experienced anything like this. His eyes burned, and he couldn't see anything, thrashing wildly as he tried to rid himself of Minato and stop the unbearable agony he felt in that moment. Even the Sand Ninjas were slightly affected by the flash, barely having time to react, while a small light appeared above them. The Kazekage, recovering the quickest, looked up in shock, seeing Minato floating in the air with his arms crossed. Yasukani no Magatama. In the next moment, his arms began to glow, and hundreds, perhaps even thousands, of tiny rays were fired toward the Sand Ninjas. The Kazekage's eyes widened, wondering what the hell was happening. In the next instant, countless explosions began erupting around them, hitting all the Sand Ninjas and spreading across a massive area, with the scale of the attack matching that of Shikaku, as if a field of multiple attacks had detonated all at once. That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.